She entered the exam room as a Navy corpsman with 11 spotless years of service, determined to keep one promise buried forever, but a scar on her shoulder, an admiral who knew her father, and one question she could no longer outrun changed everything. What followed was not just a military mission, but the awakening of a legacy she had spent years hiding. Healer by oath, sniper by blood, protector by destiny.
On a Monday morning in early March of 2025, the waiting room at Naval Medical Center San Diego was filled with 43 veterans. There were 42 men and one woman who desperately wished she was anywhere else. Sloane Catherine Barrett sat bolt upright in the third row, her back rigid against the plastic chair. She was 29 years old and 5'3" in her Navy uniform. Her 118-pound frame, which most people underestimated, was pure discipline. Blonde hair was pulled back in a tight regulation bun. Her blue eyes scanned the room, trained to catch details others would never see. For 3 years she had dodged this very appointment. She used every excuse she could think of, from scheduling conflicts and deployments to conveniently timed minor illnesses. She would have done anything to avoid the moment a doctor would see the secret she had concealed for more than a decade. But this new Veterans Wellness Program was mandatory. There were no exceptions and no delays. Not even for a petty officer first class who would rather swallow glass than let her past be exposed. The check-in screen flashed through the names. Johnson, Patterson, Mackenzie. The room smelled of cheap government coffee and the unique anxiety of men waiting for their bodies to betray them. Veterans from the Korean War sat with hands that trembled. Vietnam vets stared into the distance. Men from Desert Storm favoured old wounds. And the veterans from Afghanistan and Iraq were still young enough to pretend they were okay. Sloane subtly scanned the room, an old, dangerous habit. She noticed the Marine in the corner adjusting his weight to favour a bad left knee. The sailor a few seats away tried to hide his withdrawal shakes behind a newspaper. The soldier near the window was mapping out all the exits and potential lines of fire. She saw these patterns because she lived them, too. The screen blinked. Barrett. S. K. She stood up without a single wasted motion that might attract attention. 11 years of service had taught her how to become invisible when necessary. She was the corpsman who faded into the background of busy clinics, the petty officer who never made a fuss, the woman who kept her head low and her history locked away. But some histories refuse to stay buried, especially those etched in skin. Room 3B was at the end of a sterile hallway. It was a standard examination room. The clinical white walls had heard a million quiet confessions of human weakness. A blood pressure cuff dangled like a tool for extracting the truth. Anatomical charts displayed the muscles and bones Sloane had memorized in corpsman school 11 years prior. Lieutenant Commander Reynolds came in holding a tablet, wearing the practiced smile of a doctor who had done this 10,000 times. He was in his mid-40s, with greying hair at his temples and a wedding band worn smooth from years of anxious fiddling. He was the kind of doctor who had seen enough to be good, but not enough to be jaded. "Petty Officer Barrett," he said, glancing at his screen. "Hospital Corpsman First Class. 11 years active duty and currently assigned to." His eyebrows lifted slightly. "SEAL Team 3. Yes, sir. How long have you been with the team?" 2 weeks, sir." Reynolds typed a few notes. "Annual wellness screening. It is a standard protocol for all veterans in this program. Do you have any current complaints or injuries I should know about?" "No, sir." "Medications?" "No, sir." "Known allergies?" "No, sir." Reynolds looked up from his tablet. He actually looked at her. "You are cleared for full duty with the SEAL team at 5'3"? Sloane met his gaze without blinking. "I exceed all physical standards required by the Navy, sir." "I am sure you do." He placed the tablet on the counter. "All right. Let us start with your vitals. I will need you to take off your blouse for the heart and lung exam. Sloane's hands froze on their way to the first button. This was it. This was the moment she had rehearsed escaping a dozen times. She had scheduled appointments in winter to justify long sleeves. She had requested female doctors who might not ask questions. She had created scheduling conflicts to make full exams impossible. But on this day there were no escape routes and no excuses. There was just a male doctor following the rules and a secret that was written on her skin. Her fingers finally moved to the buttons. One after another the blouse came off, revealing a standard navy T-shirt. But a T-shirt could only hide so much. Reynolds stepped behind her with his stethoscope. Deep breath. She breathed in, held it, and then let it out. The cold metal disc touched her back. It was just a professional routine. She had done this same exam hundreds of times as a corpsman, but being the patient felt like an invasion she could not describe. Good. One more. Wait. Reynolds's hand froze. 3 seconds of silence passed. Then 4, 5. Petty Officer Barrett. His voice was different now. The polite tone was gone, replaced by a sharp, clinical interest. I need you to take off your T-shirt, but, sir, the cardiac exam does not require. I found something. I need to get a better look at it. Please remove your shirt. There was no way out. There was no escape. Sloane pulled the T-shirt over her head. The scar was high on her left shoulder. An entry wound in the front, an exit wound in the back. It was the kind of injury that told a full story to anyone who knew how to read trauma. It had clean edges where military surgeons had cleaned the tissue. The scarring was precise. It was the work of professionals who had saved her arm, and maybe her life. But it was the size of the wound that made Reynolds stand completely still. He walked around to face her, his eyes locked on the scar. Then he did something strange. He used his fingers to measure the entry wound, estimating its diameter. He was calculating the bullet's path based on the exit wound. This is a gunshot wound. A high-powered rifle, he said with certainty. The entry diameter. This is a .338 caliber. It could be a .338 Lapua Magnum. Sloane remained silent. Petty officer, that is a sniper rifle round. How did a Navy corpsman? The door swung open without a knock. Admiral James Morrison entered the room, and the air seemed to change. He was 68 years old, 6'2", with a build that still showed 40 years of carrying heavy packs. He had silver hair cut high and tight. His eyes were those of a man who had made difficult choices in dark places and had learned to live with them. He was on his quarterly review of the Veterans Wellness Program, shaking hands and thanking the staff. He was being the public face of the Navy's care for its own. He glanced at Reynolds, and then at Sloane. His eyes landed on the scar. The world seemed to stop. Morrison's face went through 3 different looks in less than 2 seconds. First recognition, then shock. Then something that seemed like grief mixed with pride. "Barrett," he said, his voice rough and unsure. "Sloane Barrett." Sloane automatically snapped to attention, even without her shirt. "Sir." Morrison stepped closer. He was not threatening. He was cautious. He moved like he was approaching something precious and fragile that could also explode. That scar. He did not have to touch it. The size and location told him the whole story. Mike taught you to shoot. It was not a question. It was a statement filled with years of history. Sloane's throat felt tight. "Yes, sir." Reynolds looked back and forth between them, completely confused. "Admiral, do you know this petty officer?" "Doctor?" Morrison's voice was heavy with 4 decades of command. "I need 5 minutes alone with Petty Officer Barrett." "Sir, I am in the middle of an examination. 5 minutes." Reynolds knew an order when he heard one. He left the room. The door clicked shut like a bank vault. Morrison and Sloane stood about 3 feet apart. The space between them felt heavy with unspoken words. It was filled with the memory of a funeral 13 years ago. He had presented a folded flag to a widow and her daughter. He had looked at a 16-year-old girl with her arm in a sling and eyes that had seen far too much. "Mike Barrett," Morrison said, his voice becoming almost gentle. "Gunnery Sergeant Michael Barrett, 2nd Battalion, 5th Marines, Scout Sniper Platoon. 78 confirmed kills over 3 tours. He was the best shot I ever knew, and the best friend I ever had." "You were at the funeral, sir?" Sloane's voice was quiet and controlled. "You handed my mother the flag. I was 16. I had just finished my junior year of high school. My arm was in that same sling. I remember. The accident that gave you that scar. It happened 6 months before Mike died. A training accident. The rifle malfunctioned while you were practicing. A piece of it went right through you. You were lucky to keep your arm. I was lucky to be alive." Mike blamed himself. "He told me he should have inspected the rifle better. He said he should have noticed the signs of metal fatigue." Morrison paused. "He also told me that after you recovered, you promised your mother you would never touch a gun again." Sloane's jaw set hard. After 11 years of therapy, after 11 years of telling herself she had accepted her father's death, the anger was still there. It was like a piece of shrapnel lodged too close to her heart to be removed. If he felt so guilty, then why did he keep deploying? Why did he leave us just 6 months later? The question was sharper than she meant it to be. But Morrison did not flinch, because men like Mike do not know how to stop. We convince ourselves that we are protecting people. We think we are the only ones with the skills to do the job. We believe our knowledge and experience are too important to sit on the sidelines. He paused. It is a lie we tell ourselves so we can continue doing the only thing we know how to do. He died doing that thing. He did. Helmand Province, October of 2012. An IED ambush followed by a coordinated attack. He was providing overwatch for a patrol. He saw the trap, called it in, and stayed in position to cover their retreat. He drew fire from several directions. He got every Marine out but himself. Except himself. The weight of that fact was heavy in Morrison's voice. His last radio transmission was 4 words. "Marines are clear. Out." Sloane closed her eyes and breathed through the tightness in her chest. She opened them again. "I joined the Navy in 2014, 2 years after he died. I became a hospital corpsman. I have served for 11 years. I have good evaluations, no disciplinary problems, and multiple deployments. I did everything correctly, just as he would have wanted. I save people. I uphold the promise I made to my mother, and no one knows you are a shooter. No one at all, sir." Morrison examined her expression. "Until today. What is your current post?" "SEAL Team 3, started 2 weeks ago." Something changed in Morrison's eyes, a memory taking shape. "Team 3 was my unit 30 years ago. Your commander is Blake Hawkins, a solid leader who came up through the ranks the hard way. He will push you, but he will also protect you as much as anyone can in this job. I do not require special treatment. Everyone needs someone to watch their back." Morrison's voice was firm. "Especially when they hold secrets that could be deadly. Sloane, I need to ask you something. Please think carefully before you reply." She held her breath. "If your team is in trouble, and they truly need you, not the medic, but the marksman, the girl Mike Barrett trained for 4 years, the one who understands ballistics, wind, and the Earth's rotation at 200 meters, if they need that person, Sloane, and only a promise made in grief at 16 years old is stopping you, what will you do?" The question filled the quiet room. Sloane glanced at the scar in the mirror before her. An entry point and an exit point, a constant reminder of the day the rifle failed. The day she nearly died learning the skills her father insisted she understand. "I do not know, sir." "Yes, you do." Morrison's voice was soft, but unyielding. "You know exactly what your choice will be. You will do what Mike would have done. It is what every person in this uniform does when that moment comes. You do what is necessary. The promise will have to break, and you will learn to live with that. Because a broken promise is better than dead teammates you could have saved." Sloane looked him in the eye. "Is that what you did, sir?" "More times than I can remember." He offered a grim smile. "Welcome to the one club no one ever wants to join. Our meetings are every night at 0300, when sleep refuses to come." Morrison walked to the door, then paused and looked back. "Mike always said something about why he taught you to shoot, despite your mother's worries. He said, 'I am not teaching her to be a killer. I am teaching her to be a protector. One day someone will need protection, and my daughter will be the only one there who can provide it.'" Morrison's hand was on the doorknob. "I believe that day is approaching quickly, Sloane. When it does, do not hesitate. Mike would not want you to." "Sir." Sloane's words made him pause. "Thank you for attending the funeral. Your presence meant a lot. He was my brother. You are his daughter. That means you are family." Morrison swung the door open. "Stay in touch. If you ever need anything, advice, an ear to listen, or someone to deal with command, you call me. Anything at all. Is that clear?" "Clear, sir." Then he was gone. Reynolds came back a few moments later, his professional manner restored. He completed the exam without mentioning the scar, approved her for full duty, and sent her off with forms and a future appointment she would not keep. Sloane changed in silence, buttoning her blouse, tucking it in, and adjusting her belt. In the reflection she appeared like any other sailor after a routine checkup. But she was not any longer. Someone knew her secret, and a secret once shared has a life of its own. The SEAL Team 3 compound was on the Naval Amphibious Base in Coronado, a fortress born of hard work and necessity. It was surrounded by concrete walls and chain-link fences, with buildings worn down by sea air and rough use. The Pacific Ocean lay just beyond, where recruits learn that comfort is fleeting and pain is a teacher. Sloane had been there for exactly 14 days. It was long enough to know the base, but short enough to still feel like a newcomer waiting for acceptance. It was Tuesday morning at 0800. The briefing room smelled of coffee, gun lubricant, and the distinct scent of men who view a 5-mile run as a simple warm-up. 12 operators sat in the chairs. 11 of them turned as she came in. Commander Blake Hawkins was at the front. He was 44 years old, with a face shaped by 2 decades of difficult choices and harsh environments. His eyes saw everything and forgot nothing. He had 22 years of service, with 3 tours in combat with this team alone. He was the type of leader who had paid for his respect in hard currency. "Petty Officer Barrett, you are right on time. Please have a seat." Sloane found a spot in the back row. This was the traditional place for a medic. Close enough to help if needed, but far enough to be out of the way of planning. "Gentlemen," Hawkins' voice silenced the quiet chatter, "this is Hospital Corpsman First Class Sloane Barrett. She is our new medic. 11 years on active duty, 3 combat tours, 2 in Afghanistan and 1 in Iraq. She is certified in combat medicine and advanced casualty care. She arrives with excellent recommendations from Naval Medical." The room was silent. 12 sets of eyes assessed her, weighing the risk against the potential benefit. Chief Warrant Officer Hayes spoke up. He was 50 years old, a former Marine who switched to the Navy for undisclosed reasons. Everyone called him Gunny, a habit stronger than his current service branch. At 5'3", his voice was raspy from cigarettes he had quit a decade prior. "With all due respect, Doc, can you manage a 60-pound medical pack and full gear?" "Yes, Chief." "With body armor, including front and back plates?" Yes, Chief. And ammunition, water, and your personal equipment? Yes, Chief. Gunny settled back into his seat. We will see about that on Friday. Senior Chief Petty Officer Wade Hollister was 2 seats away. 48 years old, he was quiet, like men who have seen too much to waste words. His nickname was Stone because his face never showed emotion. He was never rushed and never broke. Stone remained silent, just observing her with eyes that seemed to measure angles and outcomes. Petty Officer First Class Declan Briggs lounged in his chair as if he owned it. He was 32, with red hair and freckles that made him look younger than he was. His voice was loud enough to be heard 3 rows away. They called him Frost because of his cold demeanour in a fight. At that moment, he just seemed doubtful. The medic before you was 6'1" and weighed 190 pounds. Frost made no effort to hide his scepticism. He had trouble with the physical side of the job. No offence, but you are small. Sloane finished for him. I know. I can handle it. We will not carry you if you lag behind, Frost said to his friend, Petty Officer Dylan Garrett, just setting the rules. Hawkins interrupted the exchange. Barrett has passed every physical test the Navy has for her position. She is here on her own merit. Her place on this team will depend on her work. That is the same rule for everyone. He looked straight at Sloane. Is that understood, Petty Officer? Perfectly, sir. Good. The integration brief is Thursday. Physical training is tomorrow at 05:30. The ruck march is Friday, 12 miles with full equipment. Any questions? There was only silence. Dismissed. The men started to leave. Sloane stayed, acting like she was studying medical notes she had already memorized. Stone stopped by the door and glanced back. Barrett. Yes, Senior Chief. Welcome aboard. Do not let Frost bother you. He gives everyone a hard time. I understand, Senior Chief. Stone observed her for a second more, as if he could see something hidden. Then he departed. Sloane was alone in the now empty room. She recalled Morrison's warning about promises made and promises destined to be broken. She thought about the choice she would soon have to make. On Wednesday at 05:30, the sky was still black over Coronado. The air was crisp, a gentle reminder that even Southern California has seasons. 12 operators and 1 medic stood in formation for physical training. It was the standard SEAL warm-up, designed to sort the dedicated from the hopefuls. The session included a 2-mile run, exercises, partner carries, and drills, a familiar routine of combat readiness. Sloane maintained her pace. She was not in the front with Frost and Garrett setting the speed, nor in the back where any weakness would be seen. She ran in the middle of the group, her breathing steady, her energy saved. She could hear Frost's comment to Garrett, who ran next to him. I will bet you $20 she quits during the ruck march on Friday. She has lasted 2 weeks. 2 weeks is not the same as 12 miles with a full pack in the California desert. Sloane remained quiet. She saved her breath. Words were useless. Only actions would prove her worth. Friday came with a clear sky and growing heat. It was a 12-mile ruck march, carrying a minimum of a 60-pound pack and full gear. They were in the desert terrain east of the base, where the temperature was expected to reach 95 degrees by midday. The team gathered at 0600. The sun was already rising, and the air was warming. Sloane made a final adjustment to her pack. It contained medical gear, intravenous fluids, bandages, tourniquets, chest seals, and blood-clotting agents. Everything to save a life when a body is ready to give up. It weighed 62 pounds in total on a frame that weighed 118. The first mile felt simple, the second was just routine. By mile 4, her shoulders began to signal their discomfort. At mile 6, her hips started to protest as well. By mile 8, each step was a battle between her determination and her body. But she had faced tougher challenges in medic training, carrying 200-pound dummies over obstacle courses. She had done it in field exercises, helping mock casualties while instructors used smoke grenades and fired blanks. And she had done it on actual missions, moving wounded men who were twice her weight because letting them die was not an option. Pain is a temporary feeling. Quitting is forever. At mile 12, she reached the end. Her time was 2 hours and 41 minutes. It was not the fastest. Frost and Garrett had finished 18 minutes earlier. Stone and Gunny were 12 minutes ahead, but she completed the course. She did it on her own, without falling behind. Hawkins checked his watch as she passed, giving a single nod. Acceptable, Barrett. Gunny came over and gave her a water bottle. You can walk with the weight. That is something, but walking is not fighting. Understood, Chief. We will see how you do when people are shooting back. Monday was weapons qualification day. The range was set 20 meters inland, far from civilian areas and their noise complaints. Targets were at 50, 100, and 300 meters. The air smelled of gunpowder and hot metal, filled with the sharp sound of controlled shots. Sloane only qualified with the Beretta M9 pistol. Her military job specialty did not authorize rifle training. Corpsmen carried pistols for self-defense, not for offensive attacks. 40 rounds, 40 hits. She earned an expert marksmanship rating. Gunny watched from the observation booth, raising an eyebrow at the tight grouping of her shots. The doc can really shoot a pistol. Hawkins nodded and made a note. That is good to know if the fighting gets close. The operators then moved on to rifle qualifications. They started with M4 carbines, then moved to the serious weapon, the M40A5 sniper rifle. Sloane stood behind the firing line, officially observing, but she was actually remembering. The rifle was very familiar, too familiar. It was the same model her father had used, with the same stock design and scope system. It had the same balance and weight. Her fingers twitched without her thinking. It was muscle memory from 1,000 hours of practice. She remembered lying flat in the New Mexico desert, learning to read the wind from her father's voice in her ear. He taught her the breathing cycle that matched her own heartbeat. Stone was shooting at a target 600 meters away. It was a standard NATO chest-sized target. His first shot missed, hitting 8 inches to the left. Sloane's lips moved, and she whispered so quietly it was hard to hear. When pushing left, compensate with your right shoulder. Stone made the small adjustment. His second shot hit the center of the target. Senior Chief Wade Hollister stood 5 feet from Sloane. He was close enough to hear her whisper. His head turned just a little. His eyes met hers. Sloane quickly looked away, but it was too late. Stone fired 4 more shots. All of them hit. It was a respectable group of shots for 600 meters. When he finished, Stone walked past Sloane, close enough to whisper without anyone else hearing, "Thanks for the wind call, Doc." Sloane kept her face blank and said nothing, but Stone knew. Men like Stone always filed away information like that for later. Thursday afternoon was the medical drill, tactical combat casualty care. This was the test that showed who had only read textbooks and who had actually treated trauma under fire. The simulation was an IED blast. There were 2 casualties with very realistic injuries. They had limited supplies. The hostile environment was simulated by an instructor who fired blanks and threw smoke grenades. Sloane moved on pure instinct. The first casualty had a severed femoral artery. There was massive bleeding. She had 90 seconds before shock would set in and 2 minutes before death. Her hands moved with practiced skill. She took a tourniquet from her pack and placed it high on the thigh, above the wound. She wrapped it once and threaded it through the buckle. Then she inserted the windlass rod. She twisted it hard. The first casualty screamed. The role player was acting realistically. Sloane kept twisting. Each turn tightened the band, squeezed the artery, and turned the red spray into a slow trickle. 3 full turns, 4. The bleeding stopped. It took her 19 seconds from identifying the wound to securing the tourniquet. Standard rules allowed for 30. The second casualty had a tension pneumothorax. Air was trapped in the chest cavity, causing the lung to collapse. It was slowly killing the patient. She needed to perform a needle decompression. She found the spot in the second intercostal space on the mid-clavicular line and used a 14-gauge needle. She felt for the correct spot through the training vest, found the insertion point, and pushed the needle through. There was a pop. Air hissed out, the pressure was released, and breathing was restored. She started an IV line next, all while the instructor kept up the simulated hostile fire. She used combat gauze for other wounds and gave morphine for the pain. She did all of this while smoke made it hard to see and blank rounds cracked overhead. When the drill was over, Gunny stood over the casualties. He checked her work, he checked her times. Damn good, Doc. The best I have seen from a new team member. Hawkins nodded in approval. Barrett knows her craft. Frost leaned against the wall with his arms crossed, watching and judging. Medical skills are fine, even necessary. But we need operators who can fight back when things get dangerous. A combat medic is not a combat operator. His words were spoken loudly across the training yard, meant for her to hear. Sloane heard them and stored the information away. There was no anger, no hurt pride, just information. She understood their worry. They had lost corpsmen before, good ones, brave ones. Corpsmen who could save lives but could not return fire when the shooting began. They became a burden instead of a help in a close fight. They were asking the one question every team asks: will you get us killed? It was a fair question. It was one she could not answer with words, only with actions. And those actions were coming much faster than any of them knew. The mission briefing was on Friday afternoon. The team met in the classified planning room. Screens on the wall showed satellite images and maps with GPS coordinates. There were intelligence reports from sources Sloane was not cleared to even know about. Hawkins stood at the front with a remote control in his hand. His expression was serious. "Gentlemen, Doc, we leave on Monday at 0400. The destination is classified until we are in the air. The mission is a recovery operation. 2 American contractors, civilian security, were kidnapped 6 days ago near the Syrian and Iraqi border. Our current intelligence says they are in this compound." The screen changed. It showed an overhead image of a small village. Single-story buildings were grouped around a central courtyard. The desert was all around. There was only one road in and one road out. The enemy force is estimated to be between 8 and 12 combatants. They are a mix of local militia and foreign fighters. All are armed and all are motivated. The contractors are very important from a diplomatic view. The State Department wants them back. Our job is to go get them. Hawkins clicked to the next slide. It showed the timeline, approach routes, and backup plans. We will insert at 2200 local time. We will approach on foot from this position, 2 kilometers to the north. Stone will provide overwatch from this ridgeline here. He will have an elevation advantage 800 meters from the target. The entry team of 6 will breach the compound and recover the packages. Then we will exfiltrate to the primary landing zone. The total time on target is 90 minutes at the most. Frost raised his hand. "What is the doc's role, sir?" Hawkins looked at Sloane. "Barrett will remain at base camp with communications. This is standard operating procedure for a new corpsman on their first mission. She will monitor communications and prepare to treat casualties if we bring anyone wounded back. It was expected, reasonable, and safe." But deep inside Sloane's mind, her father's voice whispered, "They do not trust you yet. You have not earned it. You will. Hawkins' attention turned back to her. Medical preparation is your responsibility. I want you ready for the worst-case scenarios. That includes gunshot wounds, shrapnel injuries, burns, and heat or dehydration casualties. Brief the team on Monday morning before we leave. Go over treatment protocols and what we are carrying. Yes, sir. Are there any questions? Hawkins looked around the room. No hands were raised. Good. Medical brief on Monday at 0700. Gear inspection at 0800. Movement briefing at 0900. Full rehearsal at 1300. Get some rest this weekend. The real work begins on Monday. Dismissed. The team filed out. The usual jokes and casual talk that happened between briefings were gone. Mission mode was on. The men were beginning their transformation into operators. Stone waited after the others had left. He walked over to Sloane as she was gathering her tablet and notes. Barrett. Yes, Senior Chief. You have been downrange before. In real combat, not just training. 3 deployments, Senior Chief. Afghanistan twice, and Iraq once. Each rotation was 6 months. Did you see actual combat, or just stay on the base? I treated casualties that were brought back from firefights. Mortar attacks hit our forward operating base twice. I was outside the wire providing medical coverage for convoy security 3 times. We hit IEDs and took contact both times. Stone nodded his head slowly, thinking about what she said. Monday might be different. Base camp is not always safe. Are you comfortable with that M9 you qualified as an expert with? Yes, Senior Chief. Good. Keep it close to you. He started to walk away, but then he stopped. That wind call at the range. 600 meters, 8 inches of drift. You calculated that very fast. Sloane met his eyes with a steady gaze. It was just observation, Senior Chief. I was just watching the flags and the mirage. Right. Observation. Stone's expression did not change. Keep observing, Doc. Sometimes the things we notice are what save lives. He left Sloane by herself in the planning room. She looked at the satellite image still on the screen. It was the compound where everything would change in 3 days. A place where promises made would meet necessities discovered. Her hand moved to her shoulder without her thinking about it. She traced the scar through her uniform. For 11 years she had been keeping a promise. In 3 days that promise would face its biggest test. She did not know if she could keep it, but her father's voice in her memory already knew the answer. Some promises were meant to be kept. Others were meant to be broken at the perfect moment. Monday would show which kind of promise hers was. The C-130 touched down at a classified forward operating base. It was somewhere between Syria and places that do not exist on maps. It was 118 degrees Fahrenheit. The desert air felt like breathing inside a furnace. Sloane stepped off the ramp, carrying 62 pounds of medical supplies on her back. The heat was like a physical force all around her. The team moved with practiced skill. They did their gear checks and weapons checks. It was the routine of men who had done this so many times it was now muscle memory. She found some shade by a concrete barrier. She drank some water. She checked her medical pack for the 3rd time. Everything was exactly where it should be. She laid out the tools of her trade. Tourniquets, combat gauze, intravenous supplies, chest seals, and morphine. Hawkins stood in a tent that smelled of dust and diesel, gathering her gear. The intelligence update was grim. The packages were confirmed at the location, but the guard force was estimated at 15 to 20 men, much higher than they expected. Still, the plan was to proceed. When Hawkins asked for questions, Stone raised his hand to ask about the route through Exville. The primary landing zone would remain the same. The alternate was 3 clicks north if their position was compromised. The helicopter had a 30-minute response time after they made the call. The rules of engagement were clear. Any hostile action would be met as hostile intent. They had to protect the packages and protect each other, using the minimum force required. Hawkins looked at each man and said, "This is a recovery, not revenge. We get in, get them, and get out. Clean." The briefing went on, covering timelines, backup plans, and communication rules. Sloane took it all in. Her job was simple. She would stay at the base camp, monitor communications, and be ready if any casualties returned. It was a simple and safe job, exactly where a new corpsman should be. But she knew that in war, nothing ever stayed simple for long. The team moved out at 400 hours in a 6-vehicle convoy, heading to a rally point 12 kilometers from the target. The landscape looked like the surface of Mars. It was all red dirt, rocky hills, and a heat shimmer that made the horizon look like liquid. Sloane rode in the 3rd vehicle, sitting across from Frost and Garrett. No one spoke. They all had their game faces on. The transformation from joking friends into focused operators was complete. At the rally point, the vehicles formed a defensive circle and the camouflage netting went up. They established fighting positions. This would be the base camp, the spot where Sloane would wait while the others did the dangerous work. Stone walked over as she organized the medical area. He carried his M4A5 sniper rifle as if it were a part of his own body. He asked, "Doc, how are you holding up?" "I am good, Senior Chief. The heat is getting to you?" "I am managing," she replied. Stone just nodded. He looked at the medical supplies she had laid out. He saw the careful organization, with every item placed exactly where it needed to be for quick access. "You have done this before," he stated. 3 deployments, Senior Chief." The environment was different, but the principles are the same. She had served in Afghanistan twice and Iraq once, treating combat casualties from mortar attacks, explosive devices on convoys, and gunshot wounds from firefights. Sloane looked him directly in the eyes. "I have seen what happens when things go wrong." Stone was silent for a moment. Then he asked a question that caught her completely by surprise. "What do you think of the plan?" Operators did not usually ask a corpsman for a tactical opinion. "I think 15 to 20 enemies is a lot for a 7-man entry team," she said. "Yeah," Stone said, his eyes drifting toward the target area, hidden beyond the horizon. "It is." He walked away, leaving Sloane with the strong feeling that she had just passed some kind of test. The sun slowly moved across the sky. The temperature climbed to 122 degrees. Sloane forced herself to stay hydrated, drinking water and taking electrolyte tablets. She monitored her own condition just like she would a patient. At 1600 hours, Petty Officer Dylan Garrett stumbled near his vehicle. Sloane's head snapped up instantly. Her training took over before she even had a chance to think. Garrett was 24 years old and a solid performer with no major medical history. But right now, his face was flushed a deep red. He had stopped sweating, and his skin looked dry despite the intense heat. These were classic signs of a serious problem. Sloane crossed the distance in 4 quick steps. "Garrett, sit down," he replied. "I am good, Doc," she commanded. "Me, sit down now." The authority in her voice surprised him, and he sat down. Sloane pulled out her thermometer and checked his pulse, skin temperature, and his level of consciousness. His pulse was 130, but it felt weak. His skin was hot and dry to the touch, and his pupils were slightly dilated. This was heat stroke, not just heat exhaustion. This was the kind that could kill someone. "Chief Hayes!" Her voice cut across the camp. The gunny jogged over. "What is it?" "Heat stroke," Sloane said. "His core temperature is probably 105 or higher. He needs intravenous fluids immediately, and we need to cool him down right now." The gunny looked at Garrett, then back at Sloane. "Are you sure? He was fine 10 minutes ago." Sloane explained. Heat stroke comes on fast. He is not sweating anymore, which is a very late sign. We have maybe 10 minutes before he has a seizure, or worse. Sloane was already getting the intravenous supplies. I need someone to get Commander Hawkins. We have to delay our movement until Garrett is stable. The gunny did not argue. He went to get the commander. Sloane expertly inserted the intravenous line into a large vein. Saline fluid began flowing wide open. She soaked towels with cold water from a cooler and placed them on Garrett's neck, armpits, and groin, where blood flow was highest. Frost appeared with more water. "What can I do?" he asked. "Keep these towels wet and cool. Change them every 2 minutes. We need to bring his core temperature down slowly. Doing it too fast can cause other problems." Hawkins arrived. Sloane gave her report. "Heat stroke, sir. Garrett needs at least 30 minutes of treatment before he is stable enough to move. I recommend delaying our departure." Hawkins looked at Garrett. The young operator's color was already starting to improve slightly as the intravenous fluids began to work. "What is your assessment of his condition in 30 minutes?" he asked Sloane. "If he responds to the treatment, he will be conscious and stable, but not fit for combat. I recommend he stays at base camp." "Can you keep him alive here?" Hawkins asked. "Yes, sir," she replied. "It is better than if we try to move him now." Hawkins made the decision. "We delay departure by 45 minutes. Garrett stays at base. Barrett, he is your responsibility." "Understood, sir." The team immediately adjusted to the new timeline. No one complained. They had all seen heat casualties before and knew how quickly the desert could kill. 30 minutes later, Garrett was sitting up and drinking on his own. His color was returning to normal as his core temperature dropped. He looked at Sloane, embarrassed. "Sorry, Doc. You have nothing to be sorry for. The heat does not care how tough you are." "How did you know?" Garrett asked. "I barely felt off before you were checking on me." "Training, experience, and observation," Sloane replied, checking his vital signs again. "You stopped sweating, your skin changed color, and your walk was slightly unsteady. They were all indicators." Frost crouched down beside them. I was standing right next to him and did not notice a thing. "It is a different kind of training," Sloane said simply. Later, as the team prepared to leave, the gunny came over to her. "You might have saved his life, Doc." "I was just doing my job, Chief. Most corpsmen would have missed it until he collapsed," he said. The gunny's voice held a new level of respect that had not been there before. "You have got good eyes." The team finally departed at 17:30. Sloane watched them disappear into the desert. There were 7 operators moving like ghosts, with Stone and his rifle, Hawkins in the lead, and Frost and the others spread out in a tactical formation. She was now alone with Garrett and the vehicle drivers. The radio was her only connection to what was happening out in the desert. Sloane settled in to wait. Waiting was a part of combat medicine, and it was often the hardest part. She knew that people she cared about were in danger, and she was powerless to help them until they brought the wounded back to her. If they brought them back, at 1900 hours, the gunny's voice crackled over the radio. "Base, this is Entry 1. We are 2 clicks from the target. Chief Hayes is limping. I need the doc's assessment." Sloane keyed the microphone. The chief described the pain. "I twisted my ankle crossing a ravine. It is fine." "Can you put weight on it?" Sloane asked. "Yeah. Does it hurt more when you push off or when you land?" There was a pause. "Push off. Can you see or feel any swelling?" After a longer pause, Sloane closed her eyes. She could visualize the injury. It was a grade 2 ankle sprain, possibly even a grade 3. It was the kind of injury you could walk on with enough adrenaline, but it was also the kind that would fail you at the worst possible moment. "Commander Hawkins, this is Barrett. I recommend Chief Hayes changes his role. That ankle could give out during close quarters movement. He needs to avoid any fast sideways movements or running. Hawkins's voice came back. Copy that. Hayes, you are on security. You will not breach, the chief said. Sir, I can. It is not a debate, Chief. The gunny's frustration was obvious even through the radio static, but he acknowledged the order. Sloane released the microphone key and looked over at Garrett, who was listening from his cot. You just benched Gunny Hayes, Garrett said quietly. He is not going to be happy about that, Sloane replied. I would rather have him unhappy than have his ankle give out in a hallway and get someone killed. Fair point, Garrett admitted. At 2000 hours, it was completely dark. Radio discipline went silent as the team approached the target. Sloane checked her medical area for the 4th time. She had litters ready, intravenous supplies staged, and her surgical kit prepared for rapid treatment of multiple casualties. She had learned this lesson in Afghanistan. Hope for the best, but prepare for the worst. Because hope could not stop the bleeding. At 2200 hours, the silence was broken. Contact! Contact! We are taking fire! The radio suddenly exploded with overlapping voices. She could hear gunfire in the background. It was not the controlled sound of a planned fight. It was the chaos of a plan gone horribly wrong. Hawkins' voice cut through the noise. Entry team, report. We are pinned down. The intel was wrong. There are 20+ enemies. She heard an explosion, probably from a rocket-propelled grenade. Then came the words she dreaded. Frost is hit. Frost is down. Sloane was on her feet, every muscle tight. Every instinct screamed at her to move, to help, to do something. But she was 12 kilometers away, completely useless. Then she heard Hawkins's voice on the radio. Doc, we need you now. Vehicle 2 is coming to get you. Sir, I am inbound, she replied. She grabbed her aid bag. It weighed 60 pounds, lighter than her full pack, but it held everything essential. The vehicle roared into camp, and Sloane jumped in before it came to a complete stop. Go! She yelled. They flew across the desert. There were no roads, only rock, sand, and darkness. The driver used night vision to navigate. Sloane braced herself against the door, checking her supplies by feel. Tourniquets, hemostatic gauze, intravenous kits. They covered 12 kilometers in 8 minutes. The vehicle could not get any closer without being seen. She would have to run the last kilometer. Sloane jumped out while they were still moving and hit the ground running. The 60 pounds on her back felt like nothing. Adrenaline was a powerful drug. She could hear gunfire ahead. She saw muzzle flashes and heard the distinct crack of AK-47s mixed with the deeper boom of American M4s. She finally found the team behind a low wall. Frost was on his back, and a dark stain was spreading across his upper leg. It was a high femoral wound, near the femoral artery. He had 90 seconds before he went into shock. With less than 2 minutes before he would die, Sloane slid into place beside him. Bullets whizzed right over their heads. She did not even flinch. There was only the patient, the wound, and the job she had to do. "Frost," she said, "look at me. You are going to be okay." His eyes were wide with fear. "Doc, I cannot feel my leg. You are losing blood. I am fixing it. Just stay with me." She grabbed the tourniquet from her medical kit. Her hands moved with practiced precision. She placed it high on his thigh, just above the injury. It was the only way to stop this kind of bleeding in the field. She wrapped it once around his leg. She threaded the strap through the buckle and pulled it tight. Then she inserted the turning rod. Now came the most important part. She twisted the rod one time, she twisted it a second time, and the band tightened. It squeezed his flesh and compressed the artery. Frost let out a scream. Sloane kept twisting. 3 turns, then 4. The bright red spray of blood began to slow. It became a small trickle. Then it stopped completely. She locked the rod in place. She checked the wound again. No more bleeding. She checked for a pulse below the tourniquet. There was none. That was a good sign. The tourniquet was working perfectly. It took her only 19 seconds from the moment she arrived. The bleeding was stopped. "You are stable now." Frost was breathing fast and shallow. "It hurts so bad," he gasped. "That just means you are alive. Being alive hurts. Being dead does not." She quickly started an intravenous line with combat fluids. This would keep his blood pressure from dropping. "You are going to make it." More gunfire erupted, much closer this time. Hawkins dropped down next to her. "We have to get out of here. The enemy is moving around our sides." "Can he walk?" "No, we will have to carry him." "Doc, we are still taking fire. We cannot move." The next shots came from a new direction. It was a rooftop 280 meters away. Sloane saw the flash from the rifle's muzzle. She saw the angle. She knew the shooter had a perfect shot at Hawkins. Time seemed to slow down, just like in her father's old war stories. Everything became sharp and clear. The enemy sniper was aiming carefully. He was a professional, taking his time. Hawkins could not see him. He was focused on Frost, completely exposed. The shot would come in 5 seconds. Frost's M4 rifle was just 3 feet away, right where he had dropped it. It had the standard scope, a full magazine, and the safety was off. Sloane looked at the rifle, then at Hawkins, then back at the rooftop. She could hear her father's voice, as if he was standing right there. "When the time comes, you do not think, you just do it. Thinking is what gets people killed." Then she heard her mother's voice. "Promise me. Promise me you will never touch a gun again." She remembered Morrison's question. "What are you going to do?" Sloane reached out and grabbed the rifle. Her hands knew exactly what to do. It was muscle memory from 1,000 hours of practice, a skill learned throughout her childhood. She checked the chamber. A round was ready. She adjusted the scope. She estimated the range and the wind. 280 meters. The target was elevated. There was a light wind from the east. The bullet would barely drop at this distance, with a 5.56 millimeter round. She brought the rifle up to her shoulder. It settled into place perfectly. It felt like coming home. Gunny saw her. "Doc, what are you doing?" Sloane's world shrank to the view inside the scope. There were only the crosshairs and the target, an enemy sniper, a dark shape against the sky. He was in a crouched position, his rifle barrel easy to see. She controlled her breathing. In for 4 seconds, hold for 7, breathe out for 8. Her heartbeat slowed down. She timed her shot for the tiny pause between heartbeats. It was that split second when the body is absolutely still. "I have the shot." Hawkins turned and saw her with the rifle. Barrett Sloane gently squeezed the trigger, smooth and easy, just like her father taught her. The rifle pushed back against her shoulder. The bullet was in the air for 2.1 seconds. The enemy sniper jerked backward and vanished from the rooftop. For a moment there was silence. Not real silence, because gunfire still echoed around them. There were shouts in Arabic and return fire from Stone's position. But in the small space around the team, everything went quiet. Frost just stared at her. "Holy cow, did you just—" Sloane placed the rifle down carefully. She went back to Frost's side and checked his vital signs. His pulse was 110, his blood pressure was stable. "You need to be evacuated, but you are stable." Hawkins had not moved. He stared at the empty rooftop, then back at Sloane. "Where did you learn to shoot like that?" Sloane looked right at him. "My father, sir." "That was a 280-meter shot." "Yes, sir. It was a moving target, and you were under fire." "Yes, sir." Gunny crawled closer. "Who in the world is your father?" Sloane was quiet for 3 seconds. It was the secret she had kept for 11 years, the truth she had been running from. the legacy she had tried to deny. Gunnery Sergeant Michael Barrett, a Marine Scout sniper with 2nd Battalion, 5th Marines. Gunny's face showed he recognized the name. He was old enough to have known Marines from that time. Mike Barrett. The Mike Barrett, a legend in Helmand Province. Sloane just nodded. Oh, my goodness. Gunny looked from the rifle to Sloane, then to the rooftop. He taught you? For 4 years, from when I was 12 until I was 16, and you are a corpsman. I promised my mother I would never touch a gun after he died. Today I broke that promise. Hawkins was processing all of this. You saved my life. I was doing my job, sir. Keeping this team alive is my job. Your job is to be a medic. Sloane looked at Frost, at his bandaged wound, and the clear fluid in the intravenous tube. I did that job too. More gunfire reminded them they were still in danger. Hawkins made the decision. We are leaving now. Stone, you and Gunny will carry Frost on a stretcher. Barrett, you are with me. We will cover our retreat. Sir, I should stay with Frost. Frost is stable. You said it yourself. Right now, I need someone who can hit a target at 300 meters to cover our withdrawal. Can you do that? Sloane picked up Frost's rifle and checked it again. Yes, sir. They started moving. It was a combat extraction, a form of controlled chaos. Frost was on a makeshift stretcher between Stone and Gunny. Sloane and Hawkins covered their 6. An enemy squad tried to attack from the east. 4 men were moving through the rubble. Sloane spotted them first. Contact on the right, 150 meters. 4 targets. She raised her rifle. She fired in controlled pairs. 2 rounds for each target. Center of the body, 1 down, 2 down. In 4 seconds, 4 enemies were taken care of. Hawkins just stared at her. Where have you been hiding all this time? Right here in plain sight, sir. They made it to the vehicles. They loaded Frost inside and called for medical evacuation. The helicopter was on its way, 10 minutes out. Sloane attended to Frost while they waited. She checked the tourniquet and added another pressure bandage to the wound. She checked for any dangerous swelling and adjusted his intravenous line. She kept him talking. Doc, Frost said quietly, I am sorry I ever doubted you. You had every reason to doubt me. I had not proven myself. You certainly proved yourself today. You would have done the same thing for me. The helicopter landed in a swirling cloud of dust. They quickly loaded Frost aboard. The helicopter lifted up and was gone. The team sat in the darkness, the adrenaline slowly fading. Stone walked over to Sloane. He had his sniper rifle slung over his back. That first shot you made. The sniper at 280 meters. I had him in my scope too. I was just about to shoot when you fired. It was a perfect shot, right in the center of his body. Thank you, Senior Chief. Do not thank me. Just answer a question for me. Before tonight, how many combat shots have you ever made? Sloane thought about it. She thought of all the training sessions with her father. There were hundreds of them. She had fired thousands of practice rounds. But in real combat? In combat, tonight was the very first time. Stone stood completely still. Your first ever combat shot was at 280 meters, at a moving target while under fire, and you hit it on the first try? Yes, Senior Chief. Mike Barrett taught you very well. Yes, he did. Stone's expression softened. He seemed to remember something. I met your father one time. It was at a joint training exercise in 2011 at Camp Pendleton. He was the best natural shooter I have ever seen. He told me he was teaching his daughter. He said you had a real gift for it. He said you were already better than he was at your age. Sloane felt a lump form in her throat. He said that? He was proud of you. He said you had the steadiest hands he had ever seen on someone so young. He said you just understood the math behind it all instinctively. Stone paused for a moment. He also said that you promised to never use those skills. He said you had chosen a different path, to heal people instead of fighting them. I did, until tonight. Your father would have understood. In fact, he would have insisted on it. He taught you how to protect people, and that is exactly what you did. They rode back to the base camp in silence. Sloane sat alone with her thoughts, feeling the weight of her actions. She had broken her promise. She had used the skills her father had given her. She had taken a man's life. The logical side of her brain knew it was the right thing to do. Hawkins would be dead otherwise. Maybe Frost would be too. But logic could not remove the heavy feeling. Back at the base camp, Hawkins called a meeting to debrief. Let us talk about what happened out there. The intelligence was wrong. We ran into much more resistance than we expected. Frost was hit. Doc saved his life with a tourniquet in under 20 seconds. Then she saved my life with a shot I never even saw coming. After that, she provided cover fire while we left and took down 4 more hostiles. He looked directly at Sloane. Barrett, you told us you had never been in combat before. I had not been, sir. I had only treated combat casualties. That is a different set of skills. Not any more, it is not. Hawkins crossed his arms. This is what I need to know. Can you do that again when we need you to? Sloane met his gaze. Yes, sir. Without hesitating. Without hesitating. Hawkins nodded his head slowly. Then we need to figure out what your real capabilities are. Because what I saw tonight tells me you are much more skilled than any of us knew. Stone spoke up. Commander, I request permission to formally test the Doc's marksmanship. We need to know what we are dealing with. Agreed. Tomorrow morning at 800 hours. A full evaluation. Hawkins looked at the rest of the team. Does anyone have a problem with that? The room was silent. The doubt from 2 weeks ago had disappeared. Now there was only curiosity and professional respect. Gunny raised his hand. I have just one question, Doc. Why did you hide it? Why not tell us you could shoot like that? Sloane took a deep breath. Because after my father died, I promised my mother I would never touch a gun again. I joined the Navy to heal people, not to kill them. I kept that promise for 11 years. I broke it tonight because I could not live with watching Commander Hawkins die. I will have to figure out how to live with that, and how to tell my mother. But if I had to do it all over again, I would make the same choice. Do you think your mother will understand? Gunny asked. I do not know, Chief, she replied, but I really hope she does. The team broke up, exhausted, and trying to process everything they had just seen. Beneath the stars, Sloane held her phone, looking at her mother's name. She couldn't call, not yet. The words were not there. So she called Morrison, who answered quickly. He said, Sloane, I heard what happened. Hawkins called me about an hour ago. He wanted to know about Mike teaching you. I told him the whole story. Morrison paused, then said, So you broke your promise. Sloane admitted she had, and told him everything. She described Garrett's heat stroke, Frost's leg injury, the sniper on the roof, the shots she took, and the extraction. After she was done, Morrison was silent for a while. He finally said, Your father taught you to shoot for this exact purpose, Sloane. Not to be a killer, but to be a protector. You kept your team safe tonight. That was his goal. That is what all the training was for. When Sloane worried about her mother, Morrison reassured her. Your mother is tougher than you realize. She married a Marine and understood the commitment. She knows what service demands. His voice grew softer. Mike would be so proud of you. He praised the shots she made, the lives she saved, and the choice she made under pressure. He said, I am proud of you. Sloane confessed that it did not feel like something to be proud of. Morrison understood. It never does, not the first time, not really ever. But you learn to live with it, because the other option is living with the memory of teammates you could have saved. You understand that now? Sloane closed her eyes. Yes, I know, she said. He told her to get some sleep because the next day they would test her. He said, "Show them everything Mike taught you. Do not hide any more." She replied, "Yes, sir." Then Morrison added, "And Sloane, you need to call your mother. She should hear this from you before anyone else tells her." After the call, Sloane sat in the dark for another hour before she finally found the courage to dial the number. Her mother answered after 4 rings. It was late in California, after midnight. She asked, "Sloane, is everything okay?" Sloane replied, "Mom, I have to tell you something." There was a pause. Then her mother said, "You used a gun." It was not a question. It was a mother's knowing. She asked how she knew. Her mother said, "I know, my daughter, and I knew this day might come. Tell me what happened." Sloane told her the story, simplified but truthful. When she was done, her mother was quiet for a moment. Sloane could hear her soft breathing and the sound of tears. Sloane apologized, saying, "Mum, I am sorry. I know I broke my promise." Her mother's voice was firm when she said, "Stop. You made that promise to me when you were 16, right after your father died. You were just a girl then. You are not a girl any more. You are a woman who saved people tonight. You are your father's daughter, a person who heals and a person who protects." Sloane said, "I killed someone." Her mother corrected her. "You protected someone. There is a big difference. Your reason matters. The situation matters. You did not do it for anger or enjoyment. You did it because your commander would have died otherwise." Her mother's voice trembled a little. "Your father taught you those skills because he knew this moment could happen, knew you would have to make a choice. He would be so proud that you chose the right path." Tears streamed down Sloane's face as she said, "I miss him, Mum," her mother replied. "I do too, every single day. But he is with you, my dear. He is in those skills, in the choice you made, and in the people you saved." After a brief pause, she added, "I am proud of you. I am scared for you, but I am proud." Sloane said, "I love you, Mum." Her mother replied, "I love you, too. Please come home safely." The call ended. Sloane sat by herself in the desert night. She cried softly, letting all the grief and relief flow out of her. Afterward, she wiped her face, drank some water, and went to check on Garrett again. Tomorrow they would test her skills, to measure what her father had spent 4 years patiently teaching her. Tomorrow she would show them everything, no more hiding. She was her father's daughter, a medic and a shooter, both at once. Morning arrived early. Sloane was awake at 500 hours, unable to sleep. The shooting range was prepared by 800 hours. There were targets at different distances, 600 meters, 800, 1,000, and farther if necessary. Stone was waiting with an M40, a 5 rifle. The entire team was there to watch. This was more than a test. It was a reveal. "The commander wants us to test your abilities, so that is what we will do," Stone said, handing her the rifle. "Are you familiar with this weapon?" Sloane replied, "Yes, Senior Chief. My father had an M40 A3. It is the same system, just an older model. This is the A5. The stock and scope are different, but it's basically the same." Stone said, "Understood. The first target is at 600 meters. The wind is about 5 miles per hour from the west. Let us see what you can do." Sloane took the rifle. She felt its familiar weight and balance. She got into a prone position, set up the bipod, rested her cheek on the stock, and lined up her eye with the scope. She started a steady breathing cycle. The target appeared sharp and clear. She calculated the wind's effect and how much the bullet would drop at 600 meters. Then she made her adjustments. Her finger rested on the trigger. She timed her shot with her heartbeat in that quiet moment when everything is perfectly still. She fired. Stone, looking through a spotting scope, announced, "Center mass! Good shot!" "Let's do it again. 800. Sloane adjusted her scope again and recalculated. The bullet would drop more at this distance, and the wind would have a greater effect. She took the shot. He announced, "Hit in the upper chest." Stone's voice was professional and calm. 1,000 meters. Let us see if you can manage that. 1,000 meters was over half a mile away. At that distance, environmental conditions played a huge role. Shooting became more of an art than a science. Sloane had made this shot with her father in New Mexico under conditions she knew by heart. But this was a different place, with a different altitude and air pressure. She took her time. She watched the heat waves through the scope to judge the wind at various points. She calculated the bullet's path. It would drop nearly 60 inches at that range. She made a large adjustment to her scope, kept her breathing steady and her heart rate calm. She found that moment of perfect stillness between heartbeats where time seemed to stop. She fired. The bullet flew for 2 full seconds. It traveled in an arc through half a mile of desert air. Stone watched through his scope. He was silent for 5 seconds. Then he said, "Dead center. A perfect hit." Gunny, who was watching from behind, let out a quiet whistle and said, "Jesus, Doc." Hawkins came forward and asked, "Barrett, be honest. What is your maximum effective range? What is the farthest distance you have ever hit a target from?" She replied, "In training with my father, I have made confirmed hits at 1,200 meters, sir. I did it multiple times, consistently. 1,200 meters." Hawkins looked over at Stone. "That is world-class shooting." "That is better than most military snipers," Stone added. "Most guys are effective around 800 to 1,000. 1,200 meters needs incredible skill, great equipment, and perfect conditions. And she is making 1,000-meter shots with a rifle she just picked up." "My father was a good teacher," Sloane said plainly. Hawkins thought about this new information. He said, "This is our situation. We have a hospital corpsman who is also an elite sniper. We need both of her skills. The challenge is how to use them both without weakening either role." Stone suggested, "We could cross-designate her as a combat medic and designated marksman. It has been talked about at the command level before. It was never done because we never had a person who could do both jobs until now." "What are your thoughts, Barrett?" Hawkins asked. Sloane lowered the rifle and looked at her team. These were the men who had doubted her 3 weeks ago. Now they looked at her with pure professional respect. "Sir, I joined the Navy to save lives. That is still my main job. But I see now that sometimes saving lives means you have to remove threats to those lives. I am ready to serve in any way that helps this team the most. If that requires doing both jobs, I will do both." Hawkins looked at Stone, Gunny, and the rest of the team. He said, "Show of hands. Who supports Barrett serving as both our combat medic and designated marksman?" Every single hand went up right away. "Then it is settled," Hawkins announced. "Barrett, effective immediately. You are now our team's combat medic and secondary marksman. Stone is still the primary sniper. You will give medical aid and provide backup precision fire when needed. We will change our tactical plans to use both of your skills." He paused. "You will require more training on advanced shooting techniques, adjusting for the environment, hitting moving targets, and shooting in low light. Stone will be in charge of that training." She replied, "Yes, sir." Hawkins added one more thing, his expression softening a bit. "Your father trained you very well, Barrett. I am sorry that you had to break your promise to use those skills, but I am very grateful that you did." Sloane nodded, a lump in her throat making it hard to speak. The team started to leave. Stone remained. He said, "Tomorrow we begin your advanced training. We will cover long-range environmental factors, engaging moving targets, and low-light techniques. These are advanced topics your father probably showed you, but we will make it official." She said, "Thank you, Senior Chief." He replied, "Do not thank me yet. I am a tough instructor, but you have the best foundation I have ever seen outside of the top-tier units. We will build on that foundation." Stone started to leave, but then he stopped and turned back. He said, "Your father told me something. The last time I saw him, in 2011, he said, 'I am not teaching my daughter to be a killer. I am teaching her to be a protector. One day, someone will need protection, and she will be the only one who can help. I want her to have that choice.'" Stone looked directly at her. "You had that choice last night, and you chose correctly. That is all he ever wanted for you." Sloane watched him walk away, sitting alone with the rifle and her thoughts. She had spent 11 years hiding a part of herself. Not any more. She was Sloane Barrett, daughter of Gunnery Sergeant Michael Barrett, hospital corpsman first class, and now a warrior. Her father had given her 2 different skills. Now she was finally learning to use both of them. 3 weeks after the contractor rescue, the new mission orders arrived. It was a high-priority mission. An American journalist had been kidnapped near the Turkish border. His name was Thomas Whitfield, a freelance reporter who was covering the refugee crisis. Intelligence reports said he would be executed in 48 hours. This mission was going to be different from the first one. Sloane would not be staying behind at the base camp. Hawkins brought the team together. He said, "We leave at 400 hours tomorrow. The mission briefing is at 2000 hours tonight. We will do a full practice run afterward. This is going to be a difficult one. The area is complex, with civilians living nearby. The rules for engagement will be very strict." He looked at Sloane. "This is the story of a mission that went wrong from the very beginning. Barrett's team was told to expect one thing, but they walked into a nightmare. Here is how one person's hidden talent saved them all." The mission briefing that evening spelled out just how dangerous it would be. The target's compound was settled deep inside a valley. A small town was located nearby. They confirmed 15 to 20 hostiles, a mix of local militia and foreign fighters. Whitfield was seen alive just 12 hours ago. The intel suggested he would be executed tomorrow at noon. This gave them a very small window of opportunity. Hawkins clicked to a map of the area. "We will insert by helicopter 2 kilometers north. Stone will set up his sniper position here, 800 meters from the compound. The 6-person entry team will approach on foot. You will breach the walls at 0700 just as the sun rises. Get Whitfield and get out. You have 90 minutes on the ground, maximum." Stone looked at the map closely. He saw a problem. There is only one road in and out of this valley. If they know we are here, they can trap us. "There is an alternate escape point, 3 kilometers to the northwest. The helicopter will need a 20-minute heads-up before it can pick us up." Frost then raised his hand. "What is Whitfield's condition?" "We do not know. Assume he has been beaten, maybe even tortured. He might not be able to walk. Barrett, be ready to treat him and get him stable fast." "Yes, sir. There is one more thing." A serious look crossed Hawkins's face. "Our sources say one of the guards might be a former military sniper, possibly trained by the Russians. We have to treat this as an extremely dangerous situation. Stone and Barrett, you must be prepared for a sniper duel." The team practiced until midnight. They went over how to enter the building, how to evacuate the wounded, and what to do if things went wrong. They ran through every plan until it became second nature. At 3 in the morning, Sloane did a final check of her equipment. Her medical pack weighed 40 pounds. It was filled with tourniquets, gauze, IV bags, and everything needed to save a life on the battlefield. Her M4 rifle was loaded, with 4 extra magazines holding 150 rounds. Her Beretta M9 pistol was at her side. With her body armor and other gear, she was carrying 110 pounds. She had carried this weight before, and she would carry it again tonight. The helicopter ride was smooth. It flew low to the ground in the dark to avoid being seen. They landed in a dry riverbed 2 kilometers from the compound. After they jumped out, the helicopter vanished into the night. A deep silence fell over the desert. Stone immediately broke off, moving quietly to his sniper perch on the ridge. The rest of the team, Hawkins, Gunny, Frost, Garrett, Dixon, and Sloane, started moving toward the target. It took them 40 minutes. They moved slowly and carefully, using the darkness to hide. At 06:45, they reached the wall of the compound. Stone's voice crackled over the radio. "I am in position. I can see the target. My thermal scope shows—" "Wait a minute. I am seeing more people than we expected. I count 25 to 30 of them, not 15 to 20. Hawkins stopped in his tracks. "Say that again?" "30. I confirmed 30. A few cars just showed up. It looks like they brought more men." The intel was wrong. Sloane felt a knot in her stomach. More enemies meant more danger. It meant a higher chance that someone would get hurt. Hawkins made the call. "We are going in. Whitfield will not survive if we leave. Entry team, get ready for a much bigger fight. Stone, take out anyone who could stop our escape. Barrett, you stick close to me." They lined up by the door they planned to breach. Frost was at the front with an explosive charge. Gunny was second, Hawkins was third, and Sloane was fourth. Frost placed the charge on the door. Everyone took a step back. He counted down with his fingers. 3, 2, 1. The explosion ripped the door apart in a cloud of dust and splinters. The team poured inside. The first room was empty. In the second room, 2 hostiles were reaching for their guns. Gunny and Frost took them down before they could get a shot off. In the third room, they found Whitfield tied to a chair. His face was swollen, and his shirt was covered in blood, but he was alive and awake. His eyes grew wide when he saw the American soldiers. "We have the package," Hawkins said into his radio. Sloane rushed over to Whitfield. She quickly checked him over. He likely had broken ribs and injuries to his face. He was weak, but could walk with help. She cut the ropes binding him. "Can you walk?" he whispered. "I think so. Stay right behind me." Just then the world exploded. A rocket-propelled grenade flew through the window. The blast threw Sloane hard against a wall. Her ears were ringing and her vision was blurry. She quickly checked herself for injuries. Her arms and legs were fine. She was not bleeding. She could still fight, but Garrett was on the ground. Sloane crawled over to him. His left leg was badly wounded. One injury was high on his thigh, near the femoral artery. Bright red blood was pulsing out. "Not this again," she thought. But this time was different. This time she knew exactly what to do. She grabbed a tourniquet from her pack. Her hands moved with confident purpose. This was the third time she had treated this exact injury in a fight. The steps were automatic now. She placed the tourniquet high up on Garrett's leg and pulled the band tight. She threaded it through the buckle and twisted the rod. Garrett's face tightened with pain, but he did not make a sound. He knew this was necessary to save his life. Sloane kept twisting the rod. With each turn the pressure squeezed the artery shut. The pulsing blood slowed to a trickle, and then it stopped completely. She locked the rod in place and wrote down the time. It had taken her only 16 seconds. "You are stable now." She needed to start an IV, but there was no time. Heavy gunfire suddenly erupted outside. It was the unique sound of a machine gun. Stone's voice came over the radio. "You are being shot at from several directions. I count over 30 enemies. There is a machine gun on the roof of the north building, 380 meters away. I cannot get a clear shot from my position. The other buildings are blocking my view." Hawkins quickly sized up the situation. Garrett was stable but could not move. Whitfield was hurt but could walk. They were facing more than 30 enemies and were pinned down by a machine gun. "We have to silence that gun, or we are not getting out of here." Sloane peered out the window. She saw the north building and the machine gun crew on its roof. It was a two-man team. Stone did not have a shot, and she was the only other person on the team with a precision rifle. "Commander, I have a clear shot at the machine gun." Hawkins looked from her to Garrett. "You need to stay with the wounded." "Garrett is stable for now, sir. The tourniquet will hold. But none of us will be fine if that gun keeps firing." Hawkins knew she was right. "Take the shot." Sloane got into position at the window and raised her M4 rifle. She looked through her scope and judged the distance. It was 380 meters. The wind was light. At this range, her bullet would drop about 18 inches. The machine gunner was partly hidden behind a metal shield. She could only see his head and upper chest. It was a very small target, a difficult shot, but it was not impossible. She controlled her breathing, waited for the natural pause, and fired. The machine gunner jerked and fell back, but a second man immediately took his place and started firing again. Sloane adjusted her aim slightly. The new gunner was being more careful, showing less of himself. She fired again. The bullet sparked off the gun's metal frame. A miss. The gunner ducked even lower. Sloane tracked his movement, aimed just ahead of him, and fired a third time. A direct hit. The second gunner went down. The machine gun was finally silent. "Gun is down," Stone confirmed over the radio. "Excellent shooting, Doc. Entry team, let's move now." Hawkins grabbed Whitfield. Gunny and Frost put Garrett on a makeshift stretcher. "Barrett, you are with me. Cover our 6. They started moving. They carried Garrett on a stretcher made from a door and some rope. Sloane and Hawkins fired back as they retreated. The compound erupted in chaos behind them. Enemies were now everywhere. The team had to fight their way across 200 meters of open ground. Sloane shot at targets as they appeared, firing in short, controlled bursts. She kept moving between shots, just like her father had taught her. Fire and move. Never stay still. They finally reached the rally point. They found temporary safety behind a cluster of large rocks, 400 meters from the compound. Sloane immediately went to check on Garrett. The tourniquet was still holding. She started the IV she did not have time for earlier. His face was pale, but he was awake. Whitfield was sitting against a rock, breathing heavily. Sloane checked him over again. "How are you feeling?" "Like I have been beaten and starved for 4 days," he said. "That is about right." She gave him some water, just small sips. Hawkins was on the radio. "We need extraction now, at landing zone Alpha. We have 2 wounded. The helicopter is on its way. It will be here in 10 minutes. 10 minutes. They had to survive for 10 more minutes. Then Stone's voice came through the radio, but it sounded strained. "I am hit," he said. "My right shoulder." I cannot provide cover any more. They had lost their sniper. Just then the enemies started to regroup. Sloane looked through her scope and saw them. It was a squad of 8 men moving tactically toward them. They were only 200 meters away and closing in. The team was in a terrible position. Garrett could not move, and Whitfield could barely walk. Stone, their sniper, was wounded. They could not fight well while trying to protect the injured. Someone had to slow down the enemy. Sloane made her choice. "Commander, I will set up a defensive position here. I can delay them while you get everyone to the landing zone." "Negative. We need you with the wounded." "Sir?" Garrett is stable, and Whitfield is okay for now. But if those 8 men reach us before the helicopter gets here, we will all die. Just give me 60 seconds. I will slow them down, and then I will catch up." Hawkins knew she was right, even though he hated the idea. 60 seconds, Barrett. Then you run. It was a direct order. "Yes, sir," she replied. Sloane took 2 extra magazines from Frost's gear. She moved to a spot 150 meters from the team. The cover was good. She had a clear line of fire toward the compound. She lay prone, her M4 rifle steady on its bipod. She had 90 rounds ready, plus more in the Beretta M9 she carried as a backup. 8 enemies were approaching, 180 meters away. She chose her first target, the man leading the group. She fired 2 rounds right into his chest, and he went down. The other 7 men scattered like professionals, instantly finding cover. They started firing back, and bullets hit the rocks all around Sloane. She did not even flinch. She found her next target, fired, and the second man fell. She glanced at her watch. 15 seconds had passed. She had 45 seconds left. The 6 remaining enemies started to move tactically. 3 went left to flank her, and 3 went right. It was standard military strategy. Sloane focused on the group to her left. She fired 2 quick rounds at each of them. 1 man dropped, another was wounded, and the 3rd retreated behind cover. The group on the right used the chaos to get closer. They were now only 100 meters away, which was far too close. Sloane quickly moved 20 meters to her right, finding a new angle. The enemy kept firing at her old position, their reaction slower than her movement. From her new spot, she engaged the group on the right. There were 3 targets, just 70 meters away now. She used short, controlled bursts of fire. 1, 2, 3. They all went down. 30 seconds remained. Only 3 of the original 8 enemies were left, and they were hiding. They were being careful now. Behind her, she heard the welcome sound of the approaching helicopter. It was the beautiful sound of rescue. 15 seconds to go. One of the last 3 enemies made a move. He was carrying something large. Through her scope, Sloane saw it clearly. It was a rocket-propelled grenade launcher. He was getting ready to fire at the helicopter. He was moving, now 240 meters away. She only had seconds before he could shoot. If that rocket hit the helicopter, everyone would die. Sloane made a split-second calculation, considering the wind, the distance, and the target's movement. She took one final steadying breath and found a moment of perfect calm. She fired. The man with the launcher collapsed. The weapon fell to the ground without firing a shot. The helicopter safely landed at the landing zone. Now it was time to run. Sloane broke from her cover and sprinted toward the helicopter. It was a 150-meter dash with a full combat load. Every muscle in her body burned with effort. The last 2 enemies shot at her, bullets zipping past her head. They were close, but they missed. She ran even harder, weaving and dodging to make herself a difficult target. 50 meters from the helicopter, Gunny appeared at the door. "Move, Doc, go! 25 meters left." She was almost there. Gunny reached out a hand, grabbed her arm, and pulled her inside the helicopter. The aircraft lifted off the ground instantly, banking sharply as it gained speed and altitude. Sloane collapsed onto the floor, gasping for air. She was shaking as the adrenaline wore off. From his stretcher, Garrett looked at her in awe. Doc just held off 8 hostiles all by herself. 5. Sloane corrected him between breaths. "I only engaged 5. The other 3 retreated." Frost just shook his head, unable to believe it. That last shot on the guy with the launcher. You were sprinting and you still made a 240-meter shot. Sloane managed a weak smile. Desperate times call for desperate measures. Hawkins knelt down beside her. "You saved us all again." Sloane was too exhausted to reply. The weight of what she had done was immense. The violence, the lives she had taken, the terrible necessity of it all. But they were all alive. Garrett, Whitfield, and the rest of the team were alive because she did what had to be done. Stone sat against the wall, his right shoulder wrapped in bloody bandages. Sloane forced herself to get up and move. "Senior Chief, let me take a look at that shoulder. I am fine, Doc." "Nothing is fine until I say it is." "Let me see." She carefully cut away his uniform sleeve. The entry wound was clear, but there was no exit wound. The bullet was still inside him. A clean shot through would have been better. "This is staying in until we can get you to a surgeon," she told him. She cleaned the wound with saline, applied special gauze to stop the bleeding, and wrapped a pressure dressing over it. Stone clenched his jaw in pain but did not make a sound. "You will need surgery to get the bullet out, but you are not bleeding out any more. The nerves and blood vessels seem to be okay." She secured the final bandage. "You will be back on a rifle in 6 weeks." "6 weeks?" Stone's eyes narrowed. "Doc, I need to be ready in 3. Take 6 weeks," she said firmly, "or risk permanent nerve damage. It is your choice, Senior Chief." Stone nodded slowly. 6 weeks it is. The helicopter flew them to the forward operating base. Garrett and Stone were taken to the surgical unit. Whitfield was sent for a medical check and a debriefing. The rest of the team went to clean their gear and write reports. Sloane sat by herself in the medical tent, still trying to process everything, still feeling the heavy weight of her actions. 2 days later, Admiral Morrison arrived by plane. The team gathered in their formal dress uniforms for a special ceremony. When Morrison entered the room, everyone snapped to attention. "At ease," he said, moving to the front. "I have reviewed the reports from your last mission, and what I have read is simply extraordinary." He looked at every member of the team, and then his gaze landed on Sloane. Petty Officer Barrett has, in the last month, saved 4 lives with her medical skills. She has neutralized 9 enemy combatants, held a defensive position alone against a larger force, and made it possible to rescue an American civilian journalist. Morrison then walked directly over to Sloane. Her father, Gunnery Sergeant Michael Barrett, was one of the finest Marines I ever knew. He taught his daughter not just how to shoot, but how to serve and protect. He taught her that sometimes healing requires violence, and that violence can be an act of healing. He paused for a moment. When Mike died 11 years ago, Sloane promised her mother she would never touch a gun again. She kept that promise for 11 years. She broke it 3 weeks ago to save her commander's life. She has continued to break it to save her teammates and complete her missions. Morrison's voice grew softer. Mike would understand that. In fact, he would demand it. He taught her those skills because he knew that one day she might face this exact choice. I promise you, her teammates know she has chosen correctly every single time. He looked right at Sloane. "Your father did not teach you to be a killer, Petty Officer Barrett. He taught you to be a protector. You are honoring his teaching every single day." Morrison then pulled out some official papers. "Effective immediately, I am recommending you for cross-designation as both a combat medic and a designated marksman. This is official recognition for the skills you have shown in the field. In addition, I am recommending you for the Navy and Marine Corps Achievement Medal for your actions during the Whitfield rescue operation." Sloane felt a lump form in her throat. "Sir, I was just doing my job. Your job now includes things most corpsmen never do. It includes things most operators struggle to do." Morrison offered a small smile. "Mike would be so proud of you, more than proud." The team reacted instantly. Gunny stepped forward and did something very unusual. He saluted her, even though they were both enlisted. It was not normal protocol, but the meaning was deep. Sloane returned the salute. Frost came next and offered his hand. "I was wrong about you, Doc. I was completely wrong." "You were not wrong, Frost," she replied. You just did not have all the information. Now you do. Stone was the last to approach, his arm in a sling. He handed her a small, custom-designed patch. It showed a Navy SEAL trident with a medical cross laid over it. It had a red cross in the middle with a gold trident around it. "It is unofficial," Stone said, "but it is accurate. You are both now. You should embrace it." That night, Sloane sat alone, looking at the patch and thinking about the journey that brought her here. She thought about the promises she had made and broken, the father she had lost and honored, and the person she had become. Her phone rang. It was her mother. Sloane answered. "Mum, I saw the news," her mother said. An American journalist was rescued from Syria. They mentioned a SEAL team was involved. Her mother's voice was cautious. "Were you there?" "Yes," Sloane said. There was a silence. "Are you hurt?" "No. Physically, I am fine." "And what about emotionally?" Sloane wondered how to answer that. "I am processing it all. It is complicated. Your father used to say the same thing after his deployments. He would need time to reconcile what he had done with who he was." Her mother took a deep breath. "Sloane, I need you to understand something. I am not happy you had to break your promise, but I understand why you did it, and I am so proud of you." "I killed more people, Mum." "You protected more people," her mother corrected her gently. "You saved lives, both as a medic and as a fighter. That is what your father taught you to do." Her mother's voice was firm. "Your intention matters. You are not killing for revenge or for pleasure. You are protecting your teammates. That is different. That is service." "I miss him so much, I know," her mother said softly. "I miss him, too." "Every single day." There was a pause. "But he is with you, sweetheart. He is in those skills you have, in the choices you make, and in the lives you save, in both ways." The conversation went on. Her mother asked for details, and Sloane shared what she was allowed to. The healing was beginning for both of them as acceptance started to replace their grief. When the call finally ended, Sloane sat in the quiet for a very long time. Then she made a choice. She sewed the special patch onto her uniform. Whether it was official or not, it represented who she was now. 6 months later, Sloane Barrett stood at the front of a classroom at the Naval Special Warfare Center in Coronado. There were 16 students in front of her, a mix of corpsmen and operators, in the very first class of its kind. The name of the course was Integrated Combat Medicine and Tactical Shooting. It was her course. "Welcome to ICMTS," she began. "This course exists because warfare does not respect job descriptions. Combat does not care if you are a medic or a shooter. It demands that you be both. We are going to teach you how to be both." She then moved over to the demonstration area. A medical dummy was on the floor, and a rifle range was visible through the windows behind her. "Rule number 1, she said. "Medical treatment is always the top priority. Always. Your main mission is to save lives. But for your patients to survive, you first have to survive the immediate threats. Sometimes that means you have to fight first. And sometimes that means you have to kill. Knowing when to change roles is the mark of a truly great operator." Sloane began her demonstration, showing them this integration in action. She treated a fake wound on a thigh, applying a tourniquet perfectly. The whole process took only 19 seconds. Then she instantly switched to her rifle and moved into a firing position. She engaged a target 300 meters away with a clean shot. Then it was right back to the patient, inserting an intravenous line and continuing medical aid. The entire drill took 47 seconds. The students just stared, completely amazed. "This is not about being the best medic or the best shooter," Sloane explained. "It is about being good enough at both, so your team can count on you for either skill at any moment. Are there any questions?" A young female corpsman, looking nervous in her early 20s, raised a hand. Petty Officer Barrett, how do you handle the conflict? The purpose of medicine is to save life. The purpose of combat is to take it. How do you find a balance? Sloane thought about the question. It was one she had asked herself many times. You do not balance them, she said. You bring them together. Both jobs have the same goal, to protect your team. Sometimes that means bandaging wounds. Other times it means removing the person causing those wounds. Both are a form of service. Both are absolutely necessary. But doesn't that go against your medical oath to do no harm? That oath is about avoiding needless harm. But the situation is key. Letting your team get hurt when you could stop it, that is causing harm. Taking an enemy's life to save your own team, that is just battlefield triage. We make these choices in hospitals all the time. This is the same idea, just on a much larger scale. The class went on for 6 hours. They did hands-on training, medical drills, and live fire exercises. The students practiced shifting between the two mindsets smoothly. After the class, Sloane went back to her office. Her desk was piled high with papers. There were requests from 3 Veterans Affairs hospitals to use her training program, official notes from the Department of Defense about expanding it, and letters from other women in the service asking for advice. But one email made her pause. The subject was, "You changed everything." It was from Hospital Corpsman 3rd Class Sarah Mitchell, stationed at Camp Pendleton. Petty Officer Barrett, I am a corpsman with the 2nd Battalion, 5th Marines. I learned about what you did, being a medic and a marksman. My dad was an Army Ranger. He taught me how to shoot before he passed away when I was 14. I joined the Navy because I told my mum I would heal people, not fight. But your story proved to me that I do not have to pick just one. I can be true to both sides of myself. Thank you for showing that this path is possible, for proving that women can take on these combined combat roles without giving up who they are. You have truly changed my life. Sloane read the message 3 times. She thought about her own legacy and how one person's actions can create ripples. Her father's influence had created a ripple that reached her, and now she was creating ripples that were reaching other people. The cycle was continuing. That night, Sloane drove to a shooting range that looked out over Coronado Beach. It was where SEAL candidates train and where her father had once visited, watching the operators and dreaming big dreams for his little girl. She set up her rifle, an M4A5, for a 1,000-meter shot. This was the kind of shot that separated the good from the exceptional. The sun was going down, the ocean wind was getting stronger, and the air was getting colder. Every single factor was working against her making a precise shot. She calculated everything, adjusted for every variable, controlled her breathing, slowed her heart rate, and found a moment of perfect calm. Then she fired. The bullet travelled for 2 seconds, covering more than half a mile of the evening air. She peered through her spotting scope. A perfect hit, right in the centre. She whispered, "Still got it, Dad?" In her memory she heard his voice, as clear as the day he taught her. "You always did, sweetheart. You were better than me by the time you were 16. Now you are the best I have ever seen." "I miss you." "I know," he seemed to say, "but you are not by yourself. You have your team, your students, and your mission. This is what I always wanted for you. Not that you would follow my exact footsteps, but that you would find your own way to honor the things I taught you." Sloane packed up her equipment and drove back to the base. Her phone buzzed. It was a text from Hawkins. "Mission briefing tomorrow, 8 in the morning. It is a complex operation. We are going to need all your skills." She smiled and typed her reply. "Ready, sir." In 6 months she had saved 23 lives. She performed medical procedures that prevented certain death. Her combat skills had stopped her own team from getting hurt. But the numbers were not the real story. The faces were. Garrett was alive because she applied a tourniquet in 16 seconds. Hawkins was alive because she made a 280-meter shot when it counted most. Whitfield was home with his family because one person had the medical skill to stabilize the wounded and the fighting skill to push back the enemy. Sloane Barrett, daughter of Michael Barrett, petty officer first class, hospital corpsman, designated marksman. She was a healer and a warrior. She was not one thing or the other. She was both. It was how her father had taught her. The legacy was not about the shots she made or the enemies she defeated. It was about the teammates she saved, the students she trained, and the new path she had proven was possible. She showed that you could bring both worlds together, that you did not have to pick between healing and fighting. She showed that the greatest warriors understood both sides. The next day would have new tests, more lives to save, and new dangers to face. It would be another chance to show what true integration meant. But for tonight, she rested peacefully. A promise she once thought was broken had been fulfilled just in a way her 16-year-old self could never have guessed. Her father would have understood. Her mother had come to accept it. Her team depended on her. Her students looked up to her. And someday in the future, a new generation would build upon the trail she had blazed. They would know that service comes in many forms, and that protecting others requires many different tools. They would know that the best among them could master both, just like Sloane Barrett had, just like her father taught her, just as the mission required, a healer and a warrior, a medic and a marksman, both at once.